Welcome to TAPintoTV. I'm Brodeur, coming to you from East Main Media Studios in Little Falls, New Jersey. On this week's episode, we speak with Dr. Meryl Dorf about how to navigate political disagreements among family members, and Corey Washington, author of Jimi Hendrix' Black Legacy, A Dream Deferred, and Heather Gallagher, Vice President of Business Development with Boston National Title Company. But first, Stephanie Willoughby speaks with Ryan Pifher of Porch Light Productions. Take it away, Stephanie.
I'm excited to be joined by Ryan Pifher, owner of Porch Light Productions. Hi, Ryan, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. So the last time we saw you, we were there in the Ridgewood, Glen Rock area at Porch Light, getting to know about you and your theater company. And now we are all in lockdown and quarantine. I'm just checking in with you. I'd love if you could just talk to our audience a little bit about how things are going and have changed since the pandemic.
Again, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. It was a pleasure to have you at the studio. I think that so far, so good. The most important things, of course, is everyone that I'm close with, friends, family, we're safe, we're healthy. Our students are safe and healthy. So, that being said, a lot of great stuff has been able to happen in that we still have a business. We are still teaching classes. We are still running our programs. And due to the amazing families that we have, the amazing students who are just so so passionate and so caring and, just so dedicated to arts education that we've been able to continue a lot of what we've been doing in the studio. Obviously not the same way, but we will take it. We're, again, super happy to just be able to get up every day and continue to do what we love.
Let's take a look back at our HomeGrown segment from last year. I grew up with a community theater in my town. I spent so much of my youth in play rehearsals with my theater friends. When I heard about Porch Light Productions, I knew that we had to come here and learn more about their theater program and find out how they're contributing to the arts culture in town.
My name is Ryan Pifher. I'm the co-owner of Porch Light Productions, and my wife is the other owner. And we started this in roughly 2005, and essentially we are a performing arts space. So we do classes and performance programs for students in kindergarten all the way through college. And we focus on acting, voice, dance, and then we also do workshops and programs in schools as well.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
How did you end up here doing this in this space?
I started out as an actor, and that's what I went to school for. I went to AMDA, and from there, I worked a variety of productions in New York. I did some TV and film, and I lived in LA for a while, and then I came back to this area, and I ended up working at a local school just as a teacher's aide. I came back from a tour, and I was like, hey, this sounds like a nice thing. And from there, I started a program for the kids there. And then they were interested in what I was, teaching them. And they said, is there anything else we can do? And I said, yeah, sure. So then we grew from there, and we did acting classes, and we did other full performance programs. And then eventually we got big enough that we decided to find a space of our own. And this location was actually right around the corner from the school in Ridgewood that I started at. And we have a black box theater. And since it is a black box theater, every seat is a good seat.
What do you think it is about theater that keeps you interested in here and the kids interested in here? What is it about this space that is so magical?
So we do something here where we give the students a sheet, and it's a building characters sheet. And essentially it just has like a whole list of different things. And what we try to do is we try to say, look at this list, write down what we can do for you. And sometimes it's, hey, I want this to be my career. I want to be on Broadway. But then a lot of times it's really just a matter of, I want to be surrounded by like-minded people. I want to create. I love to laugh. I love to try new things, be silly. I mean, the list goes on. And theater, for me, has always been that place where you can be anything and anyone, and you're always welcomed. And that's, I think, a very rare thing. We just try to get kids to, through theater, find out who they are and then celebrate it.
One of the things that my experience being in community theater taught me as like a kid is that you can create any world that you want. And to me, that's really magical. So even though days can be really stressful and crazy, I feel like with creative fields, a lot of times you get to see something change in front of you. I think what you are able to give to them is like a little bit of that they can kind of spark as they go along. And I think that's super important. I'm glad you guys are here in town doing your thing. And I'm glad that the town supports that as well. How are you guys teaching the classes now that you can't be in the studio?
Yeah, so we probably like a lot of other businesses, we use Zoom, and we actually, my wife is a web designer, so that's lucky for us that we have that at our disposal. And so she was actually able to create an entirely new online portal. So that way, when students log in, they will have easy access to all of the materials that we're working on, the music tracks, the scenes. And then so that way they can log in, they can review everything that we're going to be covering, the lesson plans, and then within that portal is also an easy to find link that they can just click, and then we sync up, and then we hold our class.
Given that you guys are still doing the classes and the kids are still learning online, are you planning on doing any productions online?
Yeah, so right before we left and we were quarantined, we were just about to embark on the production of Bonnie and Clyde. And we were going to schedule auditions and had kids enrolled. And we couldn't obviously do all that in the studio, so we brought it to the online, the Zoom, the virtual theater, and we've been in rehearsals now, and it's been going great. We did auditions, we have been learning the songs, we've been learning the choreography, they've been given roles, so it's really amazing that, again, if they believe it's possible, and we know that it's possible, that we can create anything, anywhere. So it's been really cool.
If people want to find out more about Porch Light and about all the great things you do, where would they find you?
Yeah, well, we are at www.porchlightproductions.org, and you'll see everything there about all of our online classes and programs, private lessons, and we have lots of different workshops too throughout the week that kind of pop up, so there's new things coming. And then also summer, so we'll have some virtual summer programs available as well if we find ourselves within our four walls of our home. So wherever we are, wherever we need to be, we will come find you with some amazing programs and ways to just keep you educated, learning, and excited and connected.
Right. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much for the positive update. And I hope things keep moving forward in a great way for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And again, I appreciate it. And I wish all of you the best. And thanks. Hopefully we will be able to do another interview soon back at Porch Light.
I can't wait. It'll be awesome to see you.
Thank you. You too.
To watch more Tap Into TV videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel at TAPintoTV.
Well, it is my pleasure to have clinical psychologist Meryl Dorf, PhD. Dr. Meryl Dorf, you have joined us in the studio today. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here again.
We've really enjoyed having you on the show via Zoom previously, and now you're here. So as usual, we have lots to talk about. So I have a very specific question for you today. As states are reopening. Now, you and I are sitting here in New Jersey, and New Jersey's going well into phase 2 and then headed towards phase 3, I think, currently. But as other states have varying levels of reopening, friends and family are gathering more. I wanted to ask your advice about how people can communicate, maybe some tips and tricks or techniques. We might encounter people with different political views, and this has been somewhat heightened with the pandemic. Can you give me your input on that?
Boy, it's such a timely question, Brian, because I know I'm so thrilled to be able to get out of my house and get into the world. And we had some people over in our backyard. And inevitably, everyone is thinking about the state of the world, which is so polarized right now. One of the things to keep in mind is that when you have a conversation, you want to think ahead of time. Is Uncle Joe really the person who is going to be open to hearing what you have to say? But, it's also important to think, am I open to influence? Am I really interested in hearing what he has to say? But if you make an assessment that, this is important, and someone has brought up an issue like masks. Should we wear masks? Should we not wear masks? Or who to vote for. Sometimes it's worthwhile.
So Meryl, do you have any tips or techniques or advice to help facilitate these kind of difficult conversations?
I think, if you go into a conversation and you look at yourself and you assess, am I open to what this other person has to say? Maybe you can have a conversation. But if you just want to go into a conversation and convince someone else that you're right, it's probably not going to work. I think you have to go in assuming good intentions. They're not evil. They're not necessarily wrong. You don't have to agree with what they have to say. But you do have to listen, as you said. A good way to listen is to ask questions. Ask a lot of questions, because two things happen there. One is the person feels heard or understood. They feel like you are interested in them, and they'll be more open and forthcoming with their ideas. And the other thing is that you might learn something. They might actually influence you.
What if you've been to 40 family parties with Uncle Joe and you know that he believes what he believes and it's not what you believe? Do you have any advice of how to navigate those waters? Because you can't turn Uncle Joe off like you're turning off the news.
Well, I think I'd say, I'm going to go get some more salad. Some people
refill my lemonade. Pardon me, Uncle Joe.
Some people, I think, are not really open to having a conversation. Sometimes you just say, this is not a conversation that's worth having. You make an assessment and you say, this isn't really the goal of the party. We shouldn't get into a conversation that's just going to get heated. We're here to see each other and enjoy hot dogs and find out what's going on with each other.
So Meryl, what if you have a family member that seems that they're not taking the pandemic so seriously and you're concerned about them and frankly, the family? Do you have input or advice about how to have that conversation or how to approach that?
Yeah, it is a concern. Leading with empathy is really, I think, the most effective way to have someone listen to you. And then, hey, Uncle Joe, how are you feeling lately? How are you managing in this crazy time? Make your argument. Present what you have learned and share it with them in a respectful way and see if you can have some influence on that person.
Once again, Dr. Meryl Dorf, great advice, excellent insight. I can't thank you enough for coming to visit.
Oh, it's so much fun. Anytime.
To learn more about Tap Into TV, visit TAPintoTV.net.
I'm thrilled to be joined today by Corey Washington, author and educator, to talk about his latest book, Jimi Hendrix: Black Legacy.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
I'm fascinated by your book and your work, and there's so much to talk about. regarding the late great Jimi Hendrix. So let's start right at the top. Give me a summary or just an overview of what your latest book is about, please.
My latest book on Jimi Hendrix is called Jimi Hendrix: Black Legacy, A Dream Deferred. It covers his legacy in the Black community in reference to Black music, Black culture. But when you do that, you also touch on his overall legacy. So it talks about how he influenced multiple genres of music, such as jazz, even hip hop. We, of course, know blues and rock and things like that. But what I try to do with my book is go beyond the normal, go beyond what you know about Jimi and encompass it with other things that you may not have thought about Jimi. So I think that's a plus for my book.
Could you tell me how you got interested in Jimi and writing a book? Not just one book, you have two books about Jimi. Tell me what he means to you and how you got interested in his music.
It's kind of interesting because when I was first introduced to Hendrix, it was kind of a passing interest. It really wasn't anything deep because every time I would see him, it would be just in the realm of a Woodstock or Monterey. But later on, I'm watching wrestling because back then I used to be a big wrestling fan with Hulk Hogan and the NWO. He comes to the ring playing a Jimi Hendrix song, Voodoo Child. And I pick up on that. I'm like, wow, this is a sound that I've never heard before because it starts off with the wah-wah scratch. I think everybody knows that iconic sound of how Voodoo Child starts off. Mm-hmm. And so from there, I was interested and wanted to go out and see what I can get from Jimi Hendrix. So the first album I got was the blues album, which was a whole totally different direction. But it did not deter me because I felt like that was even great. So I kept going on and on and on. And finally, just started collecting all this stuff on Hendrix, all his music, watched all the videos and so forth. And so that's how I got into a deep dive on Hendrix. And then from there, when I was in college, I wanted to write a paper on Hendrix. So I wanted to tackle why was Jimi Hendrix not as appreciated as he should be in the Black community? And so from that paper, it spurred me on to my first book, Nobody Cages Me, where I was able to talk about how nobody could cage Jimi into any genre or anything like that. And then from there, went on to my second book.
Wow. Something I wanted to ask you about, I wanted to have you lend your historic perspective on how Jimi left the United States and went to England and was kind of discovered or made his mark in the British scene, and then he really blew up. And so I wanted to have you talk about that a little bit.
Well, when you talk about Jimi Hendrix and his starting off in the Chitlin circuit, which was hardcore R&B, him having to be a sideman, playing in the back of such greats as Little Richard, Wilson Pickett, there wasn't really much for him to do with the guitar. But he wanted to branch out and become his own with the instrument. And so he started in the Village, being a little more experimental. But like you said, once he was picked up by over in England, that's when things really started to explode because he was able to get with other people who were pushing the instrument, like the Jeff Becks, the Pete Townsends, and people like that. But then Jimi wanted to take it even further than that. So he took his influences that he had in the R&B Chitlin circuit, mixed it with the British rock, and then came up with his own style, and it just branched off. And so from there, he was able to come back to the United States and influence even more people. And his journey is certainly a remarkable, unique journey, and nobody can ever match that.
But why do you think that his music or his artistry hasn't been embraced as centrally a African-American musician? That is it because he passed and he's stuck in time? What is your perspective on that?
I think a lot of it has to do with marketing, how you're introduced to Jimi Hendrix, because as you said, when your first introduction to him is usually as a psychedelic rock icon, Woodstock, Monterey. But, a lot of people don't get introduced to him as a bluesman, he was one of the great modern bluesmen of all time. Also, he did work with R&B, but at the same time, as he started to progress in his career before he was killed in the 70s, he was starting to branch off into a funkier sound, not just with the band of Gypsies,
Right.
but listen to his later work, Straight Ahead, Dolly Dagger. I mean, that's progressive funk right there.
You know, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd and the many protests across the country that are still ongoing for Black Lives Matter, I wanted to ask you about Jimmy and James Brown. You know, James Brown's well known to have done a concert in Boston after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But what many people don't know is that Jimmy also did a similar public performance that night. Can you tell me about that?
It's a part I have in my book where I write about that. James Brown and Jimi Hendrix are the only two artists known to have had concerts in the wake of Martin Luther King's assassination. Of course, like you said, James Brown was at Boston and Jimi Hendrix was in Newark at Symphony Hall. And so it's a sad state of affairs that that concert was not recorded for us in video like the James Brown concert was, because people who were in attendance in Newark said that Jimmy played this hauntingly beautiful composition in honor of Martin Luther King. And just imagine that being on video. It said that people in the audience were in tears. And so that's another thing, you know, things like that that are swept under the rug, so to speak. If more people knew about that, about Jimmy, I'm pretty sure it would only add to his legend and his stature.
It's true, and certainly those were difficult days in this country, and we have some of those difficult days right now, and we certainly could use some Jimi Hendrix in our lives, and I hope your book gives a nice doorway to people who want to learn a more detailed, a more nuanced look at Jimmy and the great artist he was, and other ways to think about him. Again, I can't thank you enough for joining me. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
To watch more Tap Into TV, follow us on social media at TAPintoTV.
I am thrilled to be joined by Heather Gallagher today from Boston National Title. Heather, thanks for taking time to talk to me.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Happy to be here.
Tell me what you do at Boston National Title, and tell me what Boston National Title does in the marketplace.
I am Vice President of Business Development at Boston National Title, and my job is to bring in business to the company. We do residential and commercial and nationwide, and we're one of the largest national title agencies that do residential and commercial. What's nice about what I do is I can really be a one-stop shop for all my clients. A lot of attorneys that I work with have, mostly do the East Coast, but every now and then they'll have a random deal in California or, Colorado. It's just nice that we can kind of be that one-stop shop for them.
So let me back up a second. So let me ask a real for dummies question. When you have a title company, and who is your client? You mentioned attorneys, but where in the process of real estate, what happens? Who's your clients?
Most of my clients are realtors, mortgage lenders. I work with real estate attorneys, banks, several developers, but those are, I would say, my top 5.
Let me ask you the cliche question. Who's your ideal client? Is it a connector, like perhaps an attorney that might know a lot of different people? Who's that ideal client for you?
I would say that the ideal client, because at the end of the day, realtors have a huge influence on where they steer the title, but I would say mostly it's the real estate attorneys. And, not every real estate attorney is in bed with a title company, as they say. That's where I like to really build relationships with. And I think what sets me apart from a lot of other title companies is that I do a lot of networking. I consider myself a connector. And the difference is when you help clients grow their business, that's a huge value add. I would say 50% of my week I spend on networking and doing Zoom calls, meetings outside, coffee shops, lunches outside. So it's a lot of networking that enables you to have that platform to add value and really set yourself apart.
Well, you know, we've talked about being the one-stop shop and the things you do. What are the things you don't do?
I don't do bad business.
Well, good. Good. And you know, what does that mean to you? And this is a very important point, because one of the gut checks we've all had during our COVID-19 challenges is, you know, about relationships, about doing good business with people and who have our backs and things like that. So what is good business to you?
Well, I think good business is when you have a great company to back you. And, you know, Boston National Title, we're a Blackstone portfolio company. And I think there's something to be said for that. We're not a mom and pop shop like many other title companies in the area are. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you are serving a lot of different clients on a commercial and residential way, it's just, you have to have that backing and the team and the support. I have a great boss who is out of New York, and she is fantastic. She runs our New York office, Nicole Wolosoff, and the whole team behind her in her office is fantastic. And then our headquarters is in Charlotte. Oh. So most of all my transaction works gets handled out of Charlotte.
So I want to ask you about business development and networking. What is the difference between those two things? And what techniques or methods are the most effective for you when you're building business and networking?
Well, I think in the beginning, when I build a relationship, or, you know, maybe it's obtaining a new client, it's very new and you're still learning about that person. Development is really digging deeper and kind of I like to say is peeling the layers of the onion, because everyone works differently and everyone has different needs. I have some clients that just want good service. Other clients, you know, really want that collaboration and partnership. I think that the networking part is great, but the development part is really when you can take your business to the next level of finding out what their needs are.
So let me ask you, you're a member of the ABA networking group or business development group, the American Business Associates. How does a group like that help you develop business and create relationships?
Well, what I think is so different about ABA, and you just said it yourself, it's building those relationships. It's not just a one, you know, quick fix and then on the next. It is really people developing their relationships with one another, talking outside of the group, and really finding out, like, who do you know in your circle? Like, who is in Heather Gallagher's circle? I'm a nationwide title company, so it's like, I know a lot of people. I do a lot of networking. I want to share my Rolodex with those people in ABA, and they're a wealth of information, because not only are they connectors, but they really take the time to get to know you. It's a very unique group. I love it.
Well, listen, it's been great talking to you, and I love hearing about your business and the path you've had, and I can't thank you enough for taking time to talk.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
To watch more Tap Into TV, follow us on social media at TAPintoTV.
Tune in next week for another episode of Tap Into TV. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and you can watch any of our video segments anytime at TAPintoTV.net. Thanks for watching, and please stay safe and healthy. All right. Well, here goes nothing, right? One take. Let's see if we can do it. 3, 2.
We are socially distanced.
And we don't have fevers and are seemingly healthy. So good luck, Meryl. Please go ahead.
Brian, good luck to you too.
How it goes.
The symptoms are quite familiar, and very likely you'll come up with a correct diagnosis.
Literally, it's Bastille Day today. Vive la France.
Yes, yes.
Sean, happy birthday.
Now, this presents additional challenges to master new technologies and concepts.
Oh, I expect you to die, Mr. Bond. Here we go. 3, 2, outro, take one and only.